The world we live in is a world full of hatred, violence, pain, suffering. A world full of fleeting happiness and kindness. Calradia is nothing more than a land dying. A land full of constant war and death. Murder lives forever, and so does war. It's survival of the fittest, rich against the poor. And at the end of the day, it's nothing but a human trait, hidden deep down inside of our DNA. We live, we die, we steal, we kill, we lie, just like animals, with far less grace. You know, some say we should be afraid of God, but I'm not afraid of God. I'm afraid of man. I've lost everything to this war-torn world. Not to God, but to man. The Vlandians, Battanians, Kuzits, the Aserai, even us Imperials who so love to look down on the rest of them. But underneath it all, we're just savages. We're all just a culmination of our surroundings. So what happens when you're born and raised in a war? Let me tell you, monsters are made. So now, unbeknownst to all the kings and nobles destroying our world, they've just unleashed the devil himself. I'm taking this world right out of their hands. And all of these kings, I'll make a throne out of their corpses. The time of kings is over. The time of the Emperor is now. It's no easy task to take over the world. I'm gonna need allies, money, soldiers, but I gotta start somewhere. A banner seemed as good a place as any. It took me a little, but I finally found one that I think suits me well. Not that one. That one was... never mind. I raised the banner of the dragon. Now, to become a Bannerlord, then a king, and after that, an emperor. After raising my banner, I figured the first thing I need to do is make a name for myself. As of right now, no one knows who I am. To all these lords and ladies, I'm just a nobody, a good-for-nothing peasant. I decided the best way to quickly make a name for myself was to participate in tournaments. If I start winning every tournament I'm in, my name will spread across Calradia like wildfire. But that's not all. Let's not forget about the bets, as well as the prizes. With all these combined, it's like one stone and 3 birds. So I went ahead and entered my first ever tournament. The competition was nothing to scoff at. Although I was technically outmatched, being some of the competitors were heavily armored compared to me, none of them really posed any real threat to me. The first round I didn't have to do much. Come the second round, I cut through multiple opponents with ease. The third round was a 2-on-2. My teammate and I disposed of them easily enough. Then came the final round. I was up against a legionary, an elite soldier of the Imperial Army. I expected more from him. I defeated him without breaking a sweat. And just like that, victory was mine. The first tournament went well. It was an easy victory. And just like that, I had better armor. I gained some renown and made 1,600 dinars in the process. After winning, this seemed like the most efficient way to make some money, get equipment upgrades, and make a name for myself. And let me tell you, I certainly made a name for myself. After my success with the first tourney, I decided to test my luck once more. So I went ahead and entered another. The early rounds of this one were easy enough, all the one-on-ones after were fairly simple as well. However, when I got to the final round, I versed a man named Tadios. I won't admit this to him, but he was one hell of an opponent. I've not met many people who could give me such a tough fight. However, I did manage to beat him, if only barely, and I won my second tournament. And with this win, I earned even more dinars and another gear upgrade. After winning 2 in a row, the days of the wandering tournament master began. We began by traveling from city to city, searching for any tournaments we could find. While traveling, me and my merry band of men would also indulge in the occasional slaying of some bandits here and there. During the course of our travels, I would sometimes meet some interesting people. One being a man named Grevith. He was a real interesting fellow. I would have had him join me, but his fee was a bit much, and I was trying to save money. But I could definitely see him being useful to me in the future. But anyway, we continued traveling from town to town, entering tournament after tournament. I can't tell you how many tournaments I entered, but it was victory after victory after victory. I began to win so much that I'd place bets on myself, but no one would bet against me. So the days of me making 1,600 dinars a tourney were over. Hell, I'd be lucky if I made anywhere between 600 to 800 dinars. I mean, there were still the prizes, but very fast it was starting to seem like I was gonna have to find another means of income. But before retiring completely from my tournament ways, I met someone while competing. Her name is, well, I call her Sylvie. We met while in a tournament and, well, she's something else. fought each other a total of 3 times during the matches. I won the first, she the second, and then I bested her in the third. But there was something about her. And I'm not one to believe in all that love at first sight crap, but somewhere deep down I knew this woman had to be my wife. So I bribed my way into the keep to talk with her. But as I walked in, I saw what may have been her dad. I'm not entirely sure, but there was a man standing there. But lucky for me, he was very engrossed in something, and I managed to walk right by, unnoticed. I headed upstairs where I saw her in her room. So I proceeded to knock on the door and, well, she definitely wasn't alone. She had an entourage of a few soldiers with her. They recognized me from the tourney and waved me by. So I walked up to Sylvie and began to chat with her. As we began to talk, she confessed that she's heard of me, saying that I've made quite the name for myself. It is true though, I'm known as the undefeated tourney master in all of Calradia. But anyway, I told her there was something I wanted to discuss. She seemed curious and said ask away. And I'm not one to beat around the bush, so I just told her flat out that I'm interested in her and that I want to offer my hand in marriage. As is customary, there are many other offers, so we decided to chat some more to see what we had in common. So we began to get to know each other. And the first major question she asked me was, well, she's heard I traveled around a fair bit, so she asked me if I've seen a lot of strange and awful things, or if I've done any strange or awful things. But she really just wanted to hear about some of my journeys. So I just told her that, well, yeah, it's a rough world, but there are lots of opportunities to be seized right now, if you're not afraid to get your hands dirty. She seemed okay with that answer, and then proceeded to ask me, between my followers, rivals, and enemies, she asked if I've met a lot of interesting people. I told her that, well, yeah, I've seen cruelty, degradation, and degeneracy like she wouldn't believe. Again, she seemed happy with that answer. And then she said to me, some people say you will go far. Suppose you were to rise to a position of power. What would you do? I just told her that, well, I've got a long list of scores to settle. She could be sure of that. Although my plans do go beyond that, but she was all in all quite happy, and we agreed to meet again at a later date to continue our conversations. As we began chatting again, I asked her about our future together. She said she's also been thinking about that, then proceeded to tell me she needs a partner that she can trust. So I told her the truth. Those who are loyal to me, I'm loyal to them. She was happy to hear that. And then she said I need to win her family's approval, to which I replied that I could only hope that if they come to know my loyalty, they'll accept me. And then I thought to myself, and if not, well, my head chopping axe is a little rusty. I'm kidding! Of course I'm kidding. I would never do something like that. Anyway, she said she'd accept my proposal and told me to seek out her mother and get her blessing. So the hunt to find her mother began. It didn't take long for me to find her. In fact, she actually found me. I was riding and she came up behind me. So I went and I chatted with her and she asked for a small dowry and boom, Sylvie and I were officially married. Now this is when things began to change quite a bit for us. After getting married, Sylvie still had her troops, and well, now that she was my wife, I had to pay for her men. And it was a bit on the expensive side. But after locating her and assessing her troops, I realized she has a lot of cavalry at her disposal. And with this cav, we could potentially raid trade routes and supply lines and make a ton of money. Now, before I set my plans in motion to begin raiding trade routes, I had to make a little extra cash to help fund these elite men my wife gave me. So I joined a local tourney, and well, I lost. Now, I didn't lose in a, let's say, fair way, but one of the people who did defeat me was known as the She-Wolf, and she was definitely a strong warrior, and well, that's someone who I wanted in my party. However, her price was very high, and due to having to pay for all these elite men, I couldn't exactly afford her at this moment. But nonetheless, once my money situation is stabilized, I'll definitely be returning for her. Now, having all this cav, our party's speed was through the roof. We could catch up to pretty much anyone we wanted to. So, to take advantage of this, we began to take out looters and sea raiders and step bandits and pretty much any bandits that crossed our path. For a short while, we killed a few bandit parties here and there and also took some jobs from cities. But it was finally time to start making some real dinars. We headed into the Asari territory so we could hit their caravans. Nothing against them, but it said that their trade routes are the best around. So we hit their caravan, and from this point on, we were enemies of their nation.
Infantry! Archers! Forward! Infantry! Move! Fighters! Move! Move it! Move! Infantry! Move! Cavalry! Move! Horse charge! Charge! Horse charge!
After the raid, we headed back to offload our newly obtained goods. The first raid was a success. We made nearly 5,000 dinars and suffered minor casualties. With our first raid successful, we decided to immediately head back out and hunt some more caravans. It wasn't too long later until we found our next prey.
Infantry! Forward! Horsemen, attack!
Another successful raid was under our belts, and once again we headed into town to offload our newly acquired goods. This raid was just as good as the last. We made over 5,000 in goods, as well as another 2,500 in prisoners. Not too long before this, I was informed by my wife that we had a kid on the way. This prompted me to want to make sure if anything ever happened to me, my kid would be safe. So I began investing into some legitimate businesses to help supplement my more nefarious ways of attaining wealth. But after investing, we needed to replace that money we just lost. So we were back out on the grind, hunting more caravans. So we went ahead and raided a total of 3 more Asari caravans, one after the other.
Cavalry! Kill them all! Horsemen! Forward! Infect move! Soldier! Give him hell! Rider! Charge! Archers! Forward! Attack!
Those 3 raids brought us in over 18,000 dinars. So once again, I headed into town to expand on my businesses. After that, I raided another caravan to help replace my investment costs. But then, after that, I decided I need to get some lieutenants. So I went back to visit some old friends of mine back from my tourney days. First, I met with Duane the Golden, he's called. He was happy to sign on for a simple payment of 1,600 dinars. After which, I went to see another old friend, my good man Grevith. He too was happy to sign on for about 2,600 dinars. Then, last but not least, I went back to see her, the she-wolf. Her price was a little more steep than the others, but I knew she was worth it. She signed on for about 7,500 dinars, and just like that, I now had myself some trusted lieutenants. So, with all that said and done, my newly employed lieutenants were eager to set out and make some money. And that's when we were faced with the biggest threat we've seen so far, Yoon of the Lake Rats. I guess the Asari began employing mercenaries to help fend off people like me. And well, he had over 100 men, compared to my 53, 10 of which were wounded. The men and I stayed close, scouting his army. And that's when I noticed the majority of his army was nothing more than recruits. So I thought, with the right approach, we could potentially wipe his army clean out. So began the 2-on-1 engagement.
Camels kill them or in charge!
So somewhere along the lines, the Sturgians found out that I was employing someone that I guess they're not too fond of. So next thing I knew, they were hostile to me. I honestly could care less. I just saw this as another opportunity to make some more money. And lo and behold, a lone caravan just happened to cross my path. After that raid, we had enough money to continue to expand our legitimate money-making ways a little bit more. So we headed back into the city to set up a caravan. I decided to let Grevith lead it because he had a decent grasp on trading, and I figured he'd be the best suited for the task at hand. Shortly after that, another child was born to me. It was another daughter. I named her Layla, I now had 2 daughters. So as per usual, to make up for the lost money forming the caravan, we hit a caravan of our own.
Cavalry! Attack! Follow me! Now kill them all!
Some time passed, and we once again found ourselves in the deserts of the Asari. I was there to attack caravans, but then I saw a particularly weak lord. And well, I just couldn't help myself.
Cavalry! Charge! Infantry charge!
Shortly after, on the way back to offload all my goods, I came across another fragile-looking lord. And well, I had to. It's just too much fun. Now, during all these constant battles, although successful, the casualties were piling up. Our cavalry ranks were greatly diminished by this point, so we needed to flood our ranks with additional troops. However, unfortunately, our speed did begin to falter, and that's when it happened. Things began to take a turn for the worse. I guess the Asari weren't too happy with the fact I was defeating their lords left and right. They began to hunt me. And while resupplying in a local village, it happened. We were ambushed, outnumbered, and outmatched. We were in dire straits.
Cavalry! Riders, forward! Archers, forward! Cavalry, attack! Or kill them all!
The battle was bloody. Many lay dead. And in the end, we weren't able to prevail. But I know, if this bastard fought us on open ground and didn't ambush us like the coward he is, we would have won. My forces were completely annihilated. And those who weren't dead were taken prisoner, never to be seen again. In the blink of an eye, our means to raiding caravans was gone, and we were now at the mercy of this pathetic excuse for a noble. The days that followed were brutal. We were dragged along like animals and treated harshly. But with every passing day, my resentment and hatred grew stronger. This man, I swore to myself, I would kill him. I would take his head from his shoulders and watch it roll away as I smile. Eventually, after almost a week in captivity, I escaped. After escaping, though, there was an army of Battanians, and I took this opportunity to make peace with them. All my priorities were to take down this bastard. So I set my plans in motion and began gathering men as quickly as I could. I flooded my ranks with more and more men so I could one day take him down. I went from village to village, city to city, until I finally got up to a semblance of fighting strength. However, the strength we possess now was only an echo of our former strength. But it had to be enough, so I can't wait anymore. I'm taking that son of a bitch down. We headed back towards where it all started, in hopes of finding him roaming around. However, on the way there, some jackass thought it'd be funny to hop on the bandwagon and try to take me out. He was sadly mistaken. I made sure that he wasn't friends with my real target. Little did he realize, but the fact he didn't have any relationship with him is the only reason he's still breathing. After wiping that loser out, we headed into town and unloaded our spoils and prisoners we attained from him. We then rested up and prepared to head back into the deserts. It was only a short time, but there he was. Looks like my hunch was right. I mean, there's only 2 ways out of the deserts, and this is one of them. But on closer inspection, it seemed we were outnumbered once again. I shouldn't have let my anger completely consume me. Because of this, I prematurely went into the deserts. Upon seeing him and how much men he had, I proceeded to retreat, so I could get more men and return later. However, he wasn't going to allow that. Now we have no choice. Our second encounter. Can we overcome his overwhelming advantage? Or will we fall into disgrace once again?